welcome to the Heritage Boatworks podcast. This is episode number 15. Hello and welcome back, folks. We are back on the air with Heritage Boatworks. This is the first and only podcast of its kind dedicated to exploring, protecting, and promoting boat building in New England. Happy to have you back aboard, and it's great to be back on the microphone here. I feel like it's been a long time since my last recording. Maybe it's because I did two almost back-to-back in July, and August has been a long month. It went by quickly with summer coming to a close, but it's been a busy one. So some updates for August. Heritage Boatworks is doing very well. We actually saw a giant spike in subscribers in August. My subscribers are up 30% in August. I had a bunch of people sign up. And for those of you that are new to the show listening in, welcome. And thank you so much to the veterans that have stayed on board since day one. I really appreciate you guys, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have some consistent folks out there listening. So happy to have you all here, and I hope you're enjoying my efforts. It's a lot of fun for me, so I'll keep doing it because I'm a selfish bastard, and I like doing things that are fun. We've been out on the water a lot. Been out sailing quite a bit. Been out with my kids on the boat. I've blogged about taking a couple of different groups of kids out sailing on Marcelli and the kind of the dynamics going on with the kids. It's been really fun having them out on the boat, and it's kind of a different set of rules out there because I make sure they know that I'm in charge, and when I say jump, they say how high. More of a safety concern than anything. I want to make sure they're following orders if anything gets dangerous out there, which is very rare, but safety first, right? And it's fun to watch the kids that I see behave in the house every day, how they behave out on the water. It's interesting because they're almost like they're different kids when they're out on the water. They're a little more nervous, a little more squeamish, so they kind of pay attention a little more than if they're just bouncing off the walls in the living room. So it's fun. I've got a couple blogs about the two different groups. If you check out my blog section, you can find those. One is called Sailing with the Clown Brigade, and one is called Sailing to End the War. I got a lot of good feedback on those. I actually have 11 new blogs for August, which is a record for me. I'm typically around the 5, 6, 7 range. I guess I had a lot to say in August. Harry and I got out. Harry, my son, he's 6 years old. We got out fishing a lot. So I threw some blogs in there about fishing with your son and how fun that is, and it's just been an absolute joy. We're actually out again tonight. He had a big largemouth bass that he fought and got it right to the edge of the boat. And just as we were about to bring it in, the line kind of rubbed the edge of the boat and the line snapped and the fish took off. He was heartbroken, but I tried to tell him that that's as good as a catch if you get it that close to the end of the boat. But I don't think he was buying it. But that's okay. You know, we'll catch another one, and he has caught a couple of bass this season already, so it's been pretty exciting for him. And I've written a handful of blogs about it. So you can catch up on those. I also added a little piece to the blog. If you go to my blog page, there's a section on the right called categories, and you can click on a category, whether it's boat building or the Bobcat or fishing or whatever. You can actually sort my blogs by category and read those. So yeah, leave some feedback. Let me know what you think. We said the subscribers are up. If you want to send along my website address to a friend to have them sign up, it's heritageboatworks.com/contact. I'd much appreciate that. The more the merrier we have in here. We can share all our boat tales. As far as the boat building goes, I've been able to get back down in the basement finally. July was just ridiculously busy, but August opened up a little bit for me. I got the Bobcat panels. All the panels are sprung on. It actually looks like a hull. And I've got some of the seams epoxied. So I'm going to tape the outsides with 3-inch fiberglass tape. Once that's done, I'll be flipping the boat over. So that'll be pretty exciting, and I'll get Maggie down there for that. We'll make a little ceremony out of it, maybe videotape it, and that'll be fun. We went on a vacation. I thought it might be worth telling the story here. My whole family, so it was me, my wife, Meg, and my 3 children. I have Maggie, who's 8, and I have Harry, who's 6, and I have Sam, who is 20 months. And we went all the way up to Bar Harbor, Maine, which is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. It's just so gorgeous up there. Acadia National Park has endless hiking trails and beautiful, dramatic views of cliffs and ocean, and it's just gorgeous. So my wife chose the destination, and she had the intentions of hiking and hiking and hiking and hiking. So when I planned a sailing trip with the 2 older kids, she claimed that I hijacked the vacation, but which I was okay with. I kind of did, and I just wanted to go out and sail in Maine because it's really one of the premier cruising destinations. Every sailor you talk to wants to sail in Maine. So I went to a place called Mansell, Mansell, boat rentals, and I got myself a Rhodes 19 sloop for about 5 hours. And I put the kids on there, and we started sailing out of the bay. It's in Southwest Harbor. Everything was going okay, but we didn't have any wind. So I fired up the motor a couple times, and the boat was kind of clunking around because the wind was just so light. The kids were lying on the deck of the boat, and they eventually, after about probably 45 minutes or an hour, just kind of started harassing each other, poking each other, and really getting on each other's nerves. And I couldn't stop it. I was asking them to stop and saying, cut it out, but nothing was stopping it. And I finally said, you know what, I'm going to turn the boat around and we're going to go home. So I went into attack and started coming around, and just as the bow of the boat was coming through the wind, we had a pod of porpoises pop up right in front of the boat and just kind of play around there, and the kids went berserk. They thought that was the coolest thing. And oddly enough, right around that time, the wind also picked up. So we had just an amazing sailing day, and we did about 12 or 13 miles. Sailed out to an island just out at the end of Southwest Harbor that was just covered in seals, and we did a couple laps around that island, checking out all the seals. And the kids had a blast, and they went back and told Mommy that was their favorite day, and that everything was so wonderful, and they had such a fun time on the boat, and Daddy's the greatest thing ever. So I hijacked the trip, but I was saved by my children's satisfaction with my hijacking. So everything was good in the end, and we had a blast. And if you're ever in this area, or if you planning a vacation out here, Bar Harbor, Maine is absolutely gorgeous. It's actually about 5 or 6 hours drive from where I am, so that was a little bit of a challenge getting up there, but I highly recommend it. It is just absolutely beautiful up there. The sailing, the kayaking, there's lakes that you can get kayaks and go out and fish or do whatever you want. There's, and like I say, endless hiking trails for all levels. There's a beach, a beautiful sand beach. I don't know how much you want to go swimming because the water stays pretty frigid up there. But we went for a swim, had a great time. It's just absolutely beautiful, and highly recommended. So let's move on here to my interview for the month, and this was another great one. I really enjoyed myself, and the story of how Fatty Knees Boat Company came about is really a great story. Edie and Duff was a boat builder out here in Massachusetts, in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts, that got really hit hard with two tragedies. Two of the leading people at the company died in 2009, unrelated, just happened to pass away, and the company really just kind of crumbled without that leadership and folded. So there were three of their primary boats that the boating community really wanted to preserve. And David Foynes, who owns Fatty Knees now, stepped in and helped out with that process, and he was able to distribute three of the boats to some top-notch boat builders to continue the tradition of those boats. They're Lyle Hess designs. One is the Stone Horse, one is the Saconnet 23, and the other one is the Lyle Hess Fatty Knees, the famous dinghy that he designed that sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them back in the 80s. So he was able to distribute those molds out to established boat builders to preserve those designs, and he took the Fatty Knees design for himself, and he's been making them ever since. He only builds one boat. It's really popular. It's a beautiful little tender for that. I mean, this tender could be suitable for my little Marshall, or it could be suitable for somebody's multi-million-dollar yacht. They're just that gorgeous. And he also puts a sail rig on it, and it sails beautifully. It rows beautifully. It's really a nice boat. So Dave builds those boats, but that's really not. I don't want to say it's not his life's work, but it's not the important thing that he's doing. Dave has kind of dedicated a big chunk of his time in his life to bringing boating and boat building to troubled kids. And the things he's done in his community are unbelievable. And he's really established a name for himself and a legend for himself with the things he's done to give back. And when he told me about it at the Catboat Association show, I was pretty drawn to those stories and really wanted to explore them. So I don't want to ruin the whole interview. Let me tell you everything he said before he says it. But anyway, here's David Foynes. Fantastic guy, fantastic interview, beautiful spot on Sagamore Beach in Massachusetts, and some beautiful boats and great work that he's doing. So enjoy the interview. Welcome back to Heritage Boatworks. We are here with David Foynes of Fatty Knees here in Sagamore Beach, Massachusetts. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
It's a pleasure. I've listened to your podcast before, and to be honored to be part of one of them, I'm excited.
Excellent. And I've seen, as my listeners know, I'm kind of a boat junkie, and
I would have noticed.
I've probably seen you at just about every show in this area. I travel to a lot of shows. You do a ton of shows. I know you get the boats out there everywhere, and they're beautiful boats. It's probably one of the most bomb-proof looking small tenders that's out there right now. It's just a fantastic looking boat.
Well, we appreciate that. I think that's why the design has been so successful. It's 75 years old. A Lyle Hess design, as most people who are familiar with the Fatty Knees know.
Yep.
And it's a great boat.
Yeah, they're beautiful. But we'll definitely get more into the boats a little later in the interview. First, I want to know a little more about you. We've sat at some. Last time I saw Dave, we were at the Catboat Association boat show, and it gets pretty slow in there at some hours of the day when everybody goes to a seminar or whatever. So we definitely chewed the fat there for a while. But if you could give me your path into how did you get into boating as a kid or out of high school?
When I was, as my dad tells me, and I actually have pictures to prove it, as soon as I could walk, they used to go on vacation up to Priscilla Beach in Plymouth, Mass. And as soon as I could walk, he had to keep an eye on me, because if I saw a boat, I was gone. And now that was back when I was 3 years old or so. And it's been like that. It's been like that ever since. I have just been addicted two boats and being on the water. My very first boat was a plywood skiff that my dad did some work for someone, and rather than taking money, he took, the guy was a boat builder, and he took a skiff in return. And I had that for several years. It was most exciting days when we would take it and we'd load it on the top. I don't know how we ever got it up there back then, on the top of the station wagon. We all remember station wagons.
Oh, yeah.
And we go for a ride on the Charles River.
How big was the boat?
Oh, couldn't have been any more than 9 feet or 10 feet, but you know, to me, it was the Queen Elizabeth. I mean, and that 2.5 horsepower Scott Atwater. I think I'm dating myself with the Scott Atwater.
Did you have to wrap the rope around the
No, it was a little bit more modern than that. It wasn't the old British Seagull, but
I had an Elgin that you had to wrap the rope around.
I remember those.
Yeah.
I remember those. But then it went from there as I got older, and my next boat was a Boston whaler. And again, my dad did some work for Dick Fisher, and rather than some legal work, and he worked a deal where he took a boat in return. I think I cost my dad more money in legal fees because he took boats in return.
Well, a whaler's an upgrade from a plywood skiff, though.
Well, it certainly is. And I'll tell you, if you take a walk out the barn here and look to the right, that same whaler is sitting right next door. I still have that whaler.
Nice. I'll just for the listeners out there, I'll definitely get a picture of that for the show page.
And then from there, it kept going. And I got into sailing when growing up. I grew up in Jamaica Plain, and participated in that fantastic organization, Community Boating, in Boston.
Or in Charles,
And I learned how to sail on Jamaica Pond. We would race the sailors on the Charles River. They were the river rats, and we were the pond lilies.
Nice.
And I learned how to sail back then, and that was about 10 or 12 years old. I bought a Hobie cat.
Nice.
I had a sunfish, and then I made the big step when I was probably 20 years old, and I bought a Kells 23, a trailable sailboat.
You bought a Kells? You're the only other person I know that I've ever met that has bought a Kells. My first boat was a Kells 22.
Kells, obvious, son of a gun.
And it was a piece of junk.
Well, you since this is a podcast, you put it nicely. I would have another description.
Good, I'm glad we share that.
But I bought that boat, and I can remember, to me, that was a yacht when I first bought it. And when I brought it home on the trailer, in my driveway, next to my little small house, that looked like the Queen Mary. And I worked on it, and I got it all cleaned up, and our first sailing adventure was on Lake Cochituate. I said, well, it must get better if I put it in the ocean. So I brought it down to the Cape.
You put it in Lake Cochituate in Natick?
In Natick.
So did I.
Oh, you're kidding.
That is the strangest thing. So,
folks, we didn't know any of this beforehand.
This is not staged. This is not staged. So when I was building, I bought my Kells 22, and it's all. I'll send you links on the website. I got pictures of it and everything. The thing was beat. I think I paid $700 for it. So I did a ton of cleaning. Mostly it was a lot of cleaning. Then I did a lot of work, and I just wanted it to float. I just wanted to see it in the water. I was so excited to just see it sit in the water somewhere. And I did the same thing. I brought it to Cochituate.
Lake Cochituate.
And I sailed it out, and it was probably the most boring thing I've ever done in my life.
They didn't sail. It was like sailing a bathtub.
It just crawled along. And the wind was blowing pretty well. I just figured I must be a terrible sailor.
No. There wasn't a boat to sail, but it was the only boat I had.
It was the strangest thing.
So it came down to the Cape. It went in the water. And that very first weekend, by that time I was married. And that very first weekend, we decided that we were going to take it through the canal. I had it on a mooring in Monument Beach. I can remember this like it was yesterday. I went through the canal, down to Barnstable Harbor, hit the sandbar immediately on the way in. I didn't know anything about navigation. Went into Barnstable Harbor, tied up at the Mattakees Wharf. They were having fireworks that night. We had a dinner at Mattakees Wharf, came out, saw the fireworks, went to bed, and woke up and realized that the boat wasn't moving because the tide had gone out 9 feet and we were stuck in the mud.
Now, was the 23 a fixed keel?
No, it was the swing keel.
Yeah, okay.
Swing keel. Well, we got out of the mud as the tide came in, and we mowed it out of Barnstable, back down through the canal, going back to Monument Beach. And anyone who knows the Cape Cod Canal knows, and I didn't know it at the time, that you do not want to be down by the Mass Maritime Academy with the tide in your favor and the southeasterly blowing down the canal. And that Kells would go up in the air and come down, go through the next wave, and I looked at my wife and I said, sweetheart, if this boat makes it back, we are never going sailing on it again.
Is that what they call the spit down in that area? Where
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Right as you enter the Hog Island Channel.
Yeah.
Well, we got back on a Sunday night. On Tuesday, I traded it in to a little small dealer over on Route 1 in Dedham who sold O'Days.
Nice.
And I bought an O'Day 25, which I had for a number of years. And then I bought an O'Day 28,
Yeah.
which I had for a number of years.
That was a nice boat.
And then I switched because I went to a boat show and I absolutely fell in love with a 34-foot Sea Sprite.
Okay.
Full keel, sailed it in Buzzards Bay, had it for 20 years. I still have it now. It's for sale. I've moved on to another boat. And that's really been my experience in boating. In between, I had jobs. I worked for a company in Philadelphia. I was always involved in the garment business. In the last 20-odd years of my career, before I retired, I owned a rep company in the New England area, and we were the reps for Columbia Sportswear and several other companies in the outdoor sports industry.
Okay.
And
Fatty Knees was a retirement.
Fatty Knees came along. I had no intentions of getting into the boat building business, but my very good friend Kathy Harding and Michelle Ford and John Harding had purchased Edie and Duff a number of years ago, and I've sort of lost track of the time there, but John purchased Edie and Duff years ago. And John, like myself, was addicted to boats. In front of John's house, John had more boats in the water than some small countries have in their navy. and unfortunately, John passed away very suddenly. The gentleman, Dave DeVignon, who was John's right-hand man at Edie and Duff, within a year, he passed away. Kathy and Michelle asked me if I would go over and try to help them out, sell some boats, which I did. And then Kathy decided that she didn't want to be in the boat building business anymore. And she said, what do I do? I said, well, let me look at it. Let me think about it a little bit. And I looked at what was over there. I looked at the boats that they were building. I called Jeff Marshall, who I think you guys all know from Marshall Marine, and asked Jeff if he would be interested in the Sakana 23, and he jumped at the opportunity, and Jeff has done a phenomenal job in marketing that Sakana 23.
Beautiful boats.
Bill Harding Sr. owned the rights and everything that went along with the Stewart Knockabout and the Dotish. And Edie and Duff only did the manufacturing for Bill Harding. And when this all happened, Bill Harding contacted Steve Ballantyne at Ballantyne Boatworks, and Steve and his daughter Amy took over building the Stewart Knockabout and the Dotish, and again have done a phenomenal job on that. I think in the past year they've built 8 to 10 of the Stewart Knockabouts, and now they have enough sailing in Buzzards Bay to have their own class on a Wednesday night sailing.
Nice.
The melon seed, not the melon seed. I always get the melon seed, and there was another boat that Edie and Duff did, Morning Star or something like that.
Yeah.
They hadn't built that in years, so that wasn't anything to think about. Excuse me. The Stone Horse was a great boat that Edie and Duff built, but they hadn't built one in probably 10 years.
Right.
We had priced out what it would take to continue to build a Stone Horse, and it would have to sell in the mid $70,000 range, which we just felt, the economic times, a 23-foot boat in the mid $70,000 range, other than something like the Stewart that was a class of its own,
Right.
it just wasn't feasible. So I said, what do I do? We had all the moles over there. So I called up to Crocker's Boatyard up in Manchester, and I spoke to Steve Crocker, and I asked him if he would be interested in all the moles for the Stone Horse. And he said, Dave, we really don't want to buy them. We don't know what we can't afford it. I said, we don't want any money for them.
Right.
It was your great-grandfather who designed this boat. I do not want to be the guy that makes the decision, because I know it will haunt me for the rest of my life to take those moles and chop them up and send them to the landfill.
Oh.
If you want the moles, they're yours. Come and get them. Fortunately, he came and he took them. So if any of your listeners are interested in the Stone Horse, just contact Crocker's Boatyard, and they have all the moles to build them.
And he hasn't built one yet, right?
As far as I know, he has not built one. I think he's built a rudder for one, because I got a strange phone call one day that from a shipping company that shipped a boat from New England down to Florida, and when the boat arrived in Florida, the rudder was gone.
Huh.
So I had the feeling that someone in the middle needed a rudder. And
Yeah.
and they lifted it off one night when it was parked at a truck stop. And,
Yeah, probably. It's really strange.
so, but then at the end of all this, we sold off all the used boats at Edie and Duff, and gave all the tools that were there to the two gentlemen that had been there for years working on the boats. And Kathy Harding now said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I don't want any money. I didn't sell off the fatty knees. I think I can get the fatty knees going again. And they all looked at me like I had a third head. Excuse me. But my thought was that if it had been so successful in the past, in their heyday they were building 175 to 200 of these a year. In the past few years, with the tragic loss of John and of Dave, not a lot of marketing had been done. They hadn't done shows. I said, let's try it. I was getting bored.
Yeah.
When you've been out selling like myself on the road, you can't just sit. Right. And I've been involved with some things. I got involved in starting the community boating program. I made the mistake of getting involved in some local politics, which I would advise, don't ever do that. Do the things that you like to do.
Yeah.
And Kathy, I said, Kathy, I'm going to keep the moles as my payment for what's going on. Kathy's a lovely woman, and Michelle, and they said, fine, go for it. The last year that they were in business, they sold 5 fatty knees, and we've worked it up now to over 60 boats a year. Now, it's been 4 years. We do the boat shows. We pick and choose. I don't do the Boston Boat Show. The Cape Cod Boat Show is a great boat show. The Maine Boat Builder Show is an excellent show.
Yep.
Annapolis is a great show. And this year, I'm going to my first year, and I've really vacillated back and forth because shows are expensive, and we're a small company.
Yeah.
And you say, well, you sell 50 boats. Well, at the end of it, 50 boats is 50 boats, but it doesn't relate. You want to get rich in this business. You want $1 million, you start with 5.
Yeah, right. Right.
So we're going to do the show this year in conjunction with a friend of mine, Scott Zane, who owns the Kingman Yacht Center. We're going to share a spot in his booth, and we'll see how the Newport Boat Show goes. But
That's a boat show where, like we were discussing before I turned on the recorder here, the Newport Boat Show is it's a little out of my league as far as the size of the boats go, but that could be perfect for the fatty knees, because it's the way I see the fatty knees, it's one of the premier tenders out there. It's not your just kind of one of those West Marine plastic tug type of boats that you send out. It's a handcrafted, hand laid teak. They're beautiful, and you can put a sail rig on them. It's one of the premier boats, so they may gobble them up at the Newport show.
Well, let's hope they don't gobble too quickly.
Yeah,
because we're still we're not big. We can our average delivery time is about 4.5 to 5 weeks on a boat. I have tried. I've tried to keep ahead of things, and order more hulls than I need.
Right.
And when I do it, for the first couple of orders that come in, everything's great. And then all of a sudden, I'm behind the 8 ball again. So that it's tough. But we usually can stick to our 4-week. We have our hulls built down in Somerset, Mass. A small guy like myself, and even like Edie and Duff, we can't have our own fiberglass shop with all the EPA regulations and so forth. So the trick is to find someone who is a quality builder, and I hope I can say this on the recording that my hulls are built by Rod Fortier of Fortier Boats, and one of the top builders of larger fishing boats, and Rod has done a great job in helping me to build my hulls.
Yeah, there aren't many smaller boat builders out there that do their own layout. I mean, Marshall has all of his stuff done somewhere else, and I know Roger Crawford does. And,
Yep.
So yeah, it's like you say, that there's so many rules and restrictions, and the odds are, even if you think you're following every rule, you're breaking something, and you're going to get in trouble for something.
That's exactly right.
And it's going to cost you an arm and a leg and fines for disposing of epoxy the wrong way or something like that. It's really almost not even worth the risk. It was the kind of the notion I'm getting from these interviews.
I agree.
I'm trying to think of anyone that did their own layout, and I think Cape Cod Shipbuilding was the only one that I've interviewed.
Yeah, I think Gordy and the girls over there, they do their own layout.
Yes,
over there,
and they have the space for it. They got that. Their yard is enormous. They've got that whole corner in Wareham. Okay, that's great. So that got us to here. One thing that really drew me to you, Dave, was how much you give back. You do a lot of work with kids. You're very passionate about it. You've asked me to attend a couple of the events. I've said to my wife, if I ever get to a point where I have more time, I'd love to come down and do the sailing program you do, where people just bring their own boats and grab a couple kids and bring them out for a sail for the day.
Well, the thing you have to remember is that, and I wish I could take credit for using these exact words, but Scott Zane from Kingman Yacht Club, Kingman Yacht Center, who owns Kingman Yacht Center, he realizes that the future of boating is the youth. And when you think about that, that's really the future of boating. So I have 2 things that I like to do, and one of them is to introduce young kids to boating. I had the opportunity when I was a kid. There are a lot of kids out there that don't have the opportunity. We used a phrase a few years ago when I was involved with an organization, myself and 2 other gentlemen. We started a group called Born Community Boating. And it all came about because one day I was driving from my house over to my boat, and I went through Monument Beach. And I saw a bunch of kids sitting on the wall at Monument Beach, and I don't know whether they had an iPhone in their hand, but it was a beautiful summer's day, and they're sitting there with their thumbs going, playing with some sort of electronic device. And I said, when I was that age, I was on the beach. I was in a boat. I said, what do we have to do to get kids out on the water in this town? Because here we have a large town, but no opportunities for the kids other than the Buzzards, which caters to a group of kids that live out in that area. What can we do? So I called my friend, Paul, and I said, meet me, we have to talk. And to make a long story real short, within 2 weeks, we raised enough money to go out and buy 6 Opti-Prams, because without physically having a boat, it was all just a bunch of talk.
Right.
And that first year, we had a program with 6 Optis and 2 4-week sessions, and it just grew from there. That was about 8 years ago, and right now, Born Community Boating services over 1,000 people a year.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it's just a great way to get people in the community. But then I got reeled in a number of years ago by Raz Parker. And Raz Parker, many, many years ago, heard about a camp called Camp Mitten down in Brewster. And some kids down at the camp that wanted to go for a boat ride. So he invited the 4 kids up to Parker's Boatyard, and he took them for a ride on his workboat Turmoil. Brought them in, and they all went home. Went back to the camp. And the next year, they brought 6 kids up. And then Raz decided, well, maybe I can get some of my customers to volunteer their boats. And he got 4 or 5 of us to volunteer the boats. And then Raz got a little bit older, and I got a call from him one day. And when you got a call from Raz Parker, you stopped what you were doing, and you went down there and you talked to him. He just commanded that type of attention. He's a wonderful, a real character in the boating industry and in the boatyard business. And he told me in his raspy voice, he says, Dave, I'm getting a little bit older. I can't see that well anymore. I need you to take over what we had started to call the Share the Waterways program. You going to do that for me? And before he even got the last syllable out of his mouth, he said, of course I am, Raz. Well, that was, for me, that was about 16 years ago. And that next year, we had the kids come down from Crossroads for Kids, which is just a super organization that caters to and targets at-risk youth who could very easily take the left fork, which would have taken them the wrong way in life. But Crossroads makes sure that they stay on the right path. And we ran Crossroads for Kids, the Share the Waterway program, and it got bigger, and it got bigger, and it got bigger, because I got a problem. If you can do 10 kids, you can do 15. Well, if you can do 15, you can do 20. And then one day my dad was with me on the boat, and the kids all went out sailing. We probably had 40 kids that year. And when they came in, they got on the bus, and they went back to the camp. And my father was all upset. He said, these kids haven't had lunch yet. And I said, well, I'm sorry, Dad. He said, you make sure they eat. Well, that started the next tradition, which for the past 10 years now, every year the kids come down. This year, by the way, we had 133 kids down.
Wow.
Plus counselors, all the boat volunteers, over 200 people.
How many boats did you have?
We had 27 boats, ranging from a 12-foot inflatable to the largest boat we had was a beautiful 46-foot, I believe it is, Sabre. That the gentleman who owns the boat, I didn't even have to call him this year. He did it last year, and he called me. And that's what happens. Once you do this one year, and you see the look on these kids' face, I get passionate about it just talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see the look on these kids' faces, and you realize that some of these kids are from Worcester, and they've never seen the ocean.
Right.
I mean, that just, it blows my mind. So, for the past 10 years, when the kids come in after they're out for 3 or 4 hours, my family puts on a big cookout for all the kids, all the volunteers, the staff members. It's just been a great thing.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And then a couple of years ago, I said, well, what else can we do? And I made a phone call up to Jim Miller at Wooden Boat, and then I met him at the main boat builder show, and I told him that my idea was I'd like to take a group of kids from Crossroads and build a boat. And he said, that's not a problem. Come on up here and pick up a kit. We'll give you a kit.
Up in Brooklyn?
In Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So we went up to Brooklyn, we picked up a kit, brought it down, and I set up a program between Crossroads for Kids and the Cape Cod Maritime Museum. They had just finished building that new boat building shed. And that year, 12 kids came. The volunteers had part of the boat put together because we had only 4 days to do this. And the kids came in, they got an introduction to what they were going to do. And I remember one kid picking up a DeWalt battery-powered drill driver. And I know as he was holding it in his hand, he was looking around for a TV to see what kind of a video game this thing controlled. He had no idea. But 4.5 days later, they had their very own 12-foot Bailey's Island skiff that they built themselves to bring back to the camp.
Wow.
This year, this past August, was the 3rd year that we've done that. And we've raised the money each year. A friend of mine owns a couple of restaurants called the Quahog Republic. And he feels the same way that I do about kids and boating. So I chartered the Viking in the canal. I chartered the Viking. I paid for the band. He bought all the and cooked all the food, and we filled the Viking up one night, and we had a cruise through the canal, and we raised about $3,800 for Crossroads that goes into a separate account. We raised a similar amount of money last year. So we have an account at Crossroads that is dedicated just for this boat building program.
Outstanding.
And this year, unbeknownst to us, after we raised the money, Bob Kraft from the Patriots came along and said any new money that's raised, he will match it dollar for dollar.
Wow.
So
Wow.
this program
That's
is going to be phenomenal. And again, it all goes back to introducing young kids, whether they have the wherewithal or they don't have the wherewithal, to boating. I had a very short meeting several weeks ago with the young man who owns Highline, talking to him about next year, trying to get some of the older kids from Crossroads into some sort of a program at Highline where they'd be there for a couple of days, seeing what careers there are in that industry.
The maritime.
And he looked at me with open arms, saying, "Talk to me in the winter about this."
Yeah.
So those of us that are in the business, including yourself and all the people that you've met, we truly have a passion for it.
Yep.
And that passion goes beyond our own personal immediate future. But we have to look beyond that to keep this small industry that we have going.
Mm-hmm.
So many businesses like ours, small businesses, New Bedford and Fall River were filled with them years ago. All those buildings are condominiums and warehouses now.
Yeah.
So we have an obligation to what we love to make sure that it continues.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they say, you know, when you have, as far as giving kids opportunities, they always say, hey, one of these kids could cure cancer. I mean, if you take that down and you can basically take that premise and focus it on any industry in the world. I mean,
That's right.
One of these kids could be the next Hershoff or the next Crosby or the next.
You never
Bollinger.
know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's outstanding, and I know we spoke a lot about it at the Catboat Show, and it still impresses me, and I'm really hoping I'm going to be able to hop in on some of those programs this year.
So you're always welcome.
Yeah, I think they'd love my Marshall. I'd love to sail that up, and I'd probably end up driving that up, and we could throw it in the water up here somewhere.
Well, and also you have young kids.
Yep.
So to bring your kids over there and interact with some of these kids that they really probably would not ever have the opportunity to meet.
Right.
It's great for all of them together.
Learning experience on both sides.
On both sides.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about your boat.
That's what we were here about, wasn't it?
Tell me about the Fatty Knees tender. What goes into it? How it's built? Like we already know, it's a Lyle Hess design, and
Well, the story goes along, as you know, it's a Lyle Hess design. And the story that's been passed down to me is that Lyle was out on one of his boats sailing, and he came back in, and he rode whatever tender he had back in. And when he got home, he walked into the house, and he said, I've got to design a better tender than what I currently have. And he sat down at the kitchen table, and he started drawing some pictures and some lines, and at the same time, his wife, who was nicknamed Doodle, was giving their granddaughter a bath. And said somewhere along the line, like most grandmothers are kind of joking with the grandchildren, and the Doodle said to Lamb Chop, who was the little kid's name, you're getting to be a chubby little thing. And Lamb Chop said, but Grammy, you've got fat knees. Well, maybe Lyle, and this is a true story that's been passed down. This is not like Bigfoot.
right.
This has been passed down through the generations, and that's how maybe Lyle was designing the knees of the boat at the time because it was a wooden boat, and that's how the name Fatty Knees came about. And the boat was built by the Hess Boat Building Company for a number of years out in Costa Mesa, California. Then it went someplace else. I sort of lost the in-between part. But then it ended up being built by Edie and Duff. And Edie and Duff got involved with it because they were recommending that people go and buy it. And then when the opportunity came up for them to start building the Fatty Knees, they jumped on it. And they did it for years and years.
Do you know when it was designed? When you started
They
building
tell me
the
about
boat?
75 years ago.
Okay.
So, let's see, I was born in 1949, and I'm a little bit younger than that, fortunately. So, Yeah, 49, maybe 1939, somewhere in the late 30s, early 40s.
Okay.
It was designed and built by E.D. Duff. And then when I had the opportunity, as I said earlier, I jumped at it in order to do it. But I wanted to have the tradition of it continue. So we haven't changed a thing. People always think that when someone new comes along, well, they're going to find a way to cheapen the boat so that they can make more money on it. I'll tell you right now, this is not a program for me to make a lot of money. This is a program for me to do what I like to do. I'm retired.
Right.
I didn't change anything on the boat. If anything, we added things to the boat. We didn't like down on the bottom of the boat where there was a drain, the thickness of the boat on the very bottom of it. So we had that brought up considerably. We added on there's always a silverfish escape on the bottom of the boat. And so why do we sacrifice the teak? Let's put a half round piece of bronze on there. Right. And while we're doing that, why don't we put the bronze on the dagger board and on the rudder? We did that. People had complained to us about the connection in between on the kick-up dagger board, that there was a stainless steel piece in there. So we said, well, what can we do? Because it's really tough to get stainless steel that'll never discolor. Right. So we did some looking around, and we did find a piece of this space-age, man-made material. They refer to it as G4. And it's a plastic with strengthening fibers running through it, and we use that. We haven't had a problem, and it doesn't discolor.
Nice.
We looked at it, and we always put leathers to dress it up, because this boat not only is function, it has to be pretty. Yeah. You have to look at it. It has to be visual. Yeah. And we
especially when it's a tender.
When it's a tender.
Yeah, if you've got this big, multi-thousand, multi-hundred-thousand, multi-million-dollar boat, you're not going to row up to it with some plywood skiff.
That's exactly right. So we put leathers on the gunnel guard outside the oil locks to dress it up a bit. And, I changed the color of the inside of the boat because I noticed that a lot of the older fatty knees, after they had sat in the sun, that inside sort of tannish color, the only way I could it looked like ended up looking like Mary Kay red. It looked like a light blush that someone would put on their lips to go to a prom. So we changed that, and we darkened it up a bit, and we haven't had any problems in the fading in the past 4 years. We use only top quality teak. We spend a lot of time when we pick out the teak, bringing the patterns with us and laying the patterns on so that when we make the kick-up rudder, that it's out of the same piece. So when it's down, it looks like the one piece of wood. You don't see different grains in the wood. And again, I have to give an awful lot of credit for that type of detail work to John Dietenhofer, who does about 90% of all the 95% of all the assembly work on the boat. We do a 7-foot, an 8-foot, and a 9-foot. I try to figure out which one is the most popular. And just when I say, okay, it's the 8-footer, and I put an order in for so many 8-footers and so many 9-footers and just a few 7-footers, all of a sudden all the orders that come in are for 9-footers. Right. So it never quite works out. But I can tell people that the 7-footer usually goes to Grampy, who's buying the first little sailboat for the grandchildren, or to the guy who wants to make sure that the boat will go on deck. A number of people who have Bristol channel cutters have bought 7-footers, who have the smaller Bristol channel cutter, such as Seraphim, which we all know, which is up in Situate, Mass. Those with the 28-foot usually go with the 8-footer because there's a little bit more room to put it on there, and then it sort of goes from there. You hit on something a few minutes ago about the look of the boat, and people that have a large boat want to make sure they have a tender that goes with it. And it reminds me of a gentleman up in Boston who has an absolutely gorgeous Gossett 42. It's built in Canada. loaded with teak and stained glass hatches, and just a absolutely gorgeous boat. And he had davits on the back, and he had another boat. And he called me one day, and he ended up buying a fatty niece. And I brought it up, and we got it all set up on davits. And I said, now let's make sure these davits are smooth so you can get it in and out of the water. He said, Dave, this boat will probably never go back in the water. I said, I looked at it. I said, well, why? He said, it looks too nice on the back of my boat. He said, I couldn't stand for the past couple of years having an ugly boat hanging on the back of my boat. Yeah. So that's why I bought the fatty niece. And it's going to sit right here, and it's going to look real pretty. And I've gone up sailing with him a couple of times in Boston Harbor. And I've seen the boat when he stores it down in Plymouth. And I don't think that fatty niece has ever left the davits.
Probably parks at a slip or something.
Yeah, he's in a slip.
Never needs it.
He's in a slip up in Boston, and it's just a great. It's a showpiece for him.
Do you do a lot of custom work on them? Do people request specific things? Or are they all pretty standard?
The list of options on the boat are pretty standard, and I would say 90% of the boats go out with the floorboards, lifting eyes, and a drain. However, over the past several months, I offer custom colors, and I'm able to do that because of the flexibility down that Rod affords me down at 40th. And we've done the sea mist green. We've done the flag blue one that you're looking at right now. Gray. There was another one, gray. There was one other color that we've done, jade mist green, dark green. So we've done 5 different colors so far, and I'm having a boat made to bring down to the Annapolis Boat Show, done in that beautiful, rich clarion red. It's almost like a maroon. So we're going to have a flag blue, clarion red, and a white one down there.
That's going to be great.
So it's nice, but I think people are. The more I'm out there. The more inquiries that I get, and the more people know that Fatty Knees is back out there and we're doing business again. I'm getting more and more requests for custom colors, special covers made that they can put the cover on and leave the mast up. We'll do anything within our power. The only request that I've had that I wasn't able to meet is someone wanted the boat built in carbon fiber.
Oh,
and I looked into it. And I spoke to someone who could do it, but the cost of the boat was going to be just like 5 times what the current cost of the boat is.
Right.
And as it is right now, and I don't make any bones about it, the boats they're not inexpensive.
Right. Well, they're built that way. I mean, they're like I say, I'm looking at it here, and they're kind of an eye catcher at the shows too. I'm not trying to toot the horn here just because I'm sitting here, but when I go to the shows and you're walking around, you're looking at boats, you say, "Oh, nice boat," and you're always kind of drawn to the fatty knees, and it's a Lyle Hess design. It's just the lines are gorgeous on it for such a small boat that's got these gorgeous lap strake lines. It's just a beauty. So yeah, looking at the boat, you wouldn't think it would be.
The lap strake, you got to remember, is not really just for the beauty of the boat, but the lap strake allows us to build the boat lighter, but yet gives it strength.
Right.
So that there's a method behind the. Although fortunately, it does make it look pretty. I love to be at a show and see people come along and put their hand on the side of the boat and walk along the boat and let their hand run on the boat and run down the side of the boat.
Yep.
I've got a little side project going on right now and we've been working on it for about a year. We just haven't quite perfected it. Roger Crawford has helped me.
Yep.
On it. We all know each other, so we all sort of work together with things.
It's a tight community.
I want to have a wooden mast and put a sprit rig on one of these.
Nice.
And we've tried it. We got to make a couple of changes to it, but
probably do a balanced lug on it too.
I'm open to try anything.
Little gaff or something.
I think it'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm open to try anything. I've got a couple of blank masts upstairs.
Yeah.
Roger actually taught me how to make my own mast, a wooden mast.
It's tricky.
I'm
making
nowhere
one
near
right
as
now.
good as he is.
Oh, yeah.
I never will be.
I'm building my first. It's for I'm building my daughter a beetle cat. It's a Bolger bobcat.
Yeah.
But it's a copy of the beetle cat, based the beetle cat concept, not so much the design, but 12-foot gaff rig. And yeah, I'm building a mast, spruce, Sitka spruce, and I got all the right materials. But boy, it is tricky, especially putting that taper.
Yeah,
It's up.
yeah.
It gets real tricky.
I can tell you a story about that, but that's for another day.
It's for interview number 2.
Interview number 2, that's right.
Okay. Let me see if I had anything else. One thing we tried in the last interview, I'm gonna try with you as well. It's a lightning round.
Okay.
So quick, just we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quick questions.
My goodness.
Yeah, they're pretty easy. One boat, regardless of cost, what would it be?
Nordic tug.
Nordic tug. That's an interesting one. Have you ever built your own boat, other than the Fatty Knees? Just built it from ground up?
If you can consider a 5-foot toy wooden plywood boat that I turned into a rocker for a friend of mine for a baby gift.
Absolutely. But I mean, as long as it floated.
It floated. Because after the baby grew up, we took the rockers off and put it in the water.
Nice, nice. Your favorite designer in history?
Well, I guess I'd probably say I did a Lyle Hess, but also, you know, I'm very open. I like a lot of the work that Ted Hood did.
Okay.
Ted Hood built some beautiful and designed some really great boats, both from his sailing boats down to some of his power boats.
Okay.
Have been phenomenal.
I'm not familiar with this.
And I think the people, if I have, can I pick one more?
Absolutely.
Probably up at Morris Yachts,
Okay.
who just build these. I sit back and I look at some of those Morrises. They always give them girls' names. The Francis and they're just the Annie.
Yeah.
They're just beautiful, beautiful boats.
Nice, nice. Sailor power.
Tough question for me because I told you before the interview.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
my friends say, I just went to the dark side.
Yeah.
I love sailing.
I'm gonna say sail. Because I
I guess it's got to be sail.
I'm kind of assuming the question in a vacuum. You know.
Yeah.
Which do you like better? You know, so to speak.
I love to sail.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going cruising, do you go solo or with a companion?
It's more fun to share boating with someone else.
Absolutely. And the last one, PFD, flotation or cushion?
What do I use?
Yeah. No. What do you use it for? Do you wear a PFD all the time, or do you more sit on it?
No, I wear one probably 70% of the time.
Okay.
And I'll let me clarify that for your readers, for your listeners and your readers. I came back from the vineyard this weekend by myself. I had mine on,
Okay.
and not only do I wear that, but I also went out and I bought for myself and for Annie, who's with me all the time on the boat, except for this weekend. I bought some personal EPIRBs
Okay.
that I hang on there.
Yeah.
Because you read all these stories about finding a boat going around out in circles out there with nobody on it.
Right.
So when I'm by myself, 100% of the time. When I'm with someone else, and also it's weather dependent.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. It's we should be the guys that are saying 100% of the time, all the time.
Yeah, right.
Right, we should, but realistically, I don't think there's a ton of danger if you're going out sailing on a day that's got blowing 10 knots on a sunny day, and I consider
As long as there's
myself-
someone else with you, who knows how to operate the boat?
Right, right. So my safety thing is again same as you. I wear a waist belt PFD.
Mhm.
It's not USCG or anything, but it floats, and I'll trail a 30-foot line behind the boat.
Mhm.
So if I fall over, I got a
You got something you can
chance
grab a hold of.
getting, yeah.
But what's influencing me more and more is that Ann, who is my partner, my girlfriend, we've been together long enough that we ought to be married, but we're too old to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
She works for the U.S. Coast Guard, and
Okay.
and she is so safety conscious
Yeah.
that she's the one who made me go and buy EPIRBs and new life vests,
The
the
inflatables,
inflatable ones, and I did learn the difference between them. One is approved, that you have to be wearing it to be approved, but then there's one which is hydrostatic, which is approved and you can have it hanging on the boat. There are two different types of them.
Okay.
But she's scared to death that someday we'll be out there and we'll be boarded, and she knows all these Coast Guard guys. She's the hygienist for the U.S. Coast Guard, and she does not want to have a violation and have to go back to the clinic and have them all saying,
deal with
"Hey,
that."
we stopped Annie." So
It's a pride thing.
that's it.
That's great. That's great. I really don't have anything else for you, Dave.
Well, this has been great. This has been
fantastic.
it's great. I think your website, and I follow all of your little boat building and building with the kids and so forth, and in your blog, you're doing the same thing that all of us are doing,
Yeah.
trying to get the word out there that let's go out and boating. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to have a big boat. You don't have to have an expensive boat. You know, a rubber tire floating down the river
Yeah,
can
yeah.
sometimes be as much fun as a 65-foot yacht.
And more, and just as importantly, let's get our kids involved in it too.
That's right.
And what you're doing with kids, troubled kids, is phenomenal. And yeah, that's in my head, and I'm gonna be thinking about how I can get involved in that more. So a couple of things just to plug your causes a little bit. Number one, describe that big sailboat out there to me, and if anybody's interested in it,
I have.
they can get in touch with me.
I have
I'll pass them along.
a 34-foot Sea Sprite, which is a 1981. I've sailed it for 20 years. It's in great shape. I have spared no expense with all the bells and the whistles and the electronics because I am a gadget freak, and I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Does the boat need a little bit of TLC? I've maintained it as well as I could with myself and a gentleman who works for me that has done it. But there's always something on a boat that old that a new owner wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of varnishing inside the boat.
Yeah, if anybody's interested that's listening to this, by all means, shoot me an email at Heritage Boatworks, and I'll get you in touch with Dave.
And I'm a motivated buyer.
Yeah,
I need room.
Motivated seller.
I need room. Motivated seller.
Yeah.
I need room. I'm also a buyer too. I'm always buying something. I need room in my driveway.
yeah, it's a big boat. And as far as the fatty knees, what's the best way to get in touch with you if they're interested in a fatty knee?
Best thing is go on the website. It's fattykneesboats.com or fattyknees.com. There's a phone number on there. There's an email on there. Give me a call. Usually, if I don't answer your phone call or if I don't answer your email in the first 15 or 20 minutes, it's because I got machines running and I don't hear it. But within 24 hours, I'm back to you. If people are local, if they would like to come down and like to take a look at a boat, I'm more than happy to do that. My main competition in these boats has always been a dyer and a trinker. So I went out and I bought a dyer and a trinker.
Nice.
Because a lot of people, I would say to people, well, have you seen a dyer or a trinker? And they'd say no. I said, well, where are you? Well, we're in Cambridge. I said, well, come on down here, and I'll show you both boats, and I'll line up all three boats. People who've done that have always bought a fatty knees.
That's
The other boats are beautiful,
perfect. Yeah, they're nice boats.
but
They're not a fatty knee.
they're not a fatty knees.
They're not a LS. Well, Dave, thank you so much for the
Oh,
interview.
thank you.
And
This has been great. This has been great.
absolutely. Thanks for
How's
time.
your daughter doing with her bracelets?
I still have one on.
Good.
She's not selling them anymore. So those are kind of show
Okay.
show models, I should say. We have a whole bag full of them. And I think the next time a show comes along, yeah, she'll be busy at work.
Good.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I loved spending an hour with Dave. He's a great guy and doing some really great things for his community, and it's always just inspiring to me. It's amazing, and I'm hoping to get out there for the Share the Waterways event at some point. Maybe my daughter and I will sail down and take some kids for a ride. It would just be the highlight of my summer if I could do that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please connect with me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. If you go on YouTube, there's some new stuff on YouTube that you don't see anywhere else. It's I got a new GoPro Hero camera, and I do some videos. I'm getting better. My first two were kind of cheesy, of just my kids jumping in the pool. But getting a little more creative with that, having a little more fun, and next year is going to be a blast. I'm still hoping to get a drone so I can do some aerial shots of some of these boat yards and some boats out on the water. But we need to raise a little more capital before we go spending $2,000 on a drone. If you are not already a subscriber, I encourage you to sign up. I'm not going to spam you, and I don't share your information with anybody. I just email folks once a month with updates on the website and updates on the podcast, and usually some tidbits on the podcast that you don't see anywhere else. It's just a once a month. It's a once a month newsletter. You can sign up at heritageboatworks.com/contact. So outside of that, I hope everybody had a great summer. I hope your sailing and boating seasons are continuing well into the fall. And I will see you folks in a month.